Hey there, Musketeers. Bailey here giving you another video for this week. We have an interesting topic for you today. Hope you guys like it. What's your favorite park in the Magic Kingdom? There's Main Street USA, there's Adventureland, Liberty Square Frontierland, Critter Country New Orleans Square. Just kidding, that's Disneyland. There's Fantasyland, New Fantasyland, Storybook Circus. But then there's the biggest one of them all, Tomorrowland, or it's supposed to be the biggest one of them all. It's hard to keep up with, and that's what this video is going to be about today. I have a theory about this, because a lot of it was Tomorrowland was supposed to be the biggest land of them all. Many of the ideas of Tomorrowland still have a lasting effect around all the parks. In fact, they believe it at Epcot, Disneyland Paris, Walt's original version for Epcot. All of that kind of culminates from the start of what Tomorrowland is. And now to understand that, we need to go back to the 1950s when Disneyland opened to understand why Tomorrowland is a big deal. Oh my gosh, wow. Oh, the Matterhorn. No, I'm just messing with you, I'm not there, as you can see. Anyway, okay, enough playing around. Sorry. Okay, so these rides, Rocket to the Moon. In Disneyland, it's known as Flight to the Moon. And I want to start off by saying Tomorrowland was space age. That was the theme up until the 90s when they changed it. And you have Rocket to the Moon, you have Autopia, you have the House of Tomorrow, and you have the People Mover. Now I want to mirror those images into Disney World when it opened in the 70s, and I have Flight to the Moon, Tomorrowland Speedway, Carousel of Progress, and Tomorrowland Transit Authority. Now, I understand that Carousel of Progress isn't exactly a mirror image of House of Tomorrow, but the ideals are the same, and I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, Rocket to the Moon. Space Age, 50s, Disney. Walt Disney was always fascinated with the future, the tomorrow, how humans can be positively change the world. And at that time, the Americans hadn't been to the moon yet, so this idea of going to space was still a big idea, and it was very futuristic. Now, in the 70s, Flight to the Moon, by that time, of course, the Americans have already been to the moon, so this idea of going to the moon is so outdated. It was yesterday's dream. We're talking about tomorrow. So they both came out with a ride called Mission to Mars, because at that time, well, if you go to the moon, where do you go next? You go to another planet. Kind of like you go to the New World, where do you go next? You go to the islands that surround it. That's how humanity works when it comes to finding new places. Okay, Autopia. Now, people ride Autopia and they ride the Tomorrowland Speedway, but they just kind of take it for granted. They don't truly understand why it fit in Tomorrowland and why it's still there. Now, I'm going to take you back to the 1950s. There's no interstates yet. Eisenhower has not finished his interstate plan. Interstates will shoot you straight through from state to state to state and get you to one destination. At that time, there were still highways, and highways were a little tricky because you had to keep changing roads from state to state, and you never really followed one congruent path. Okay, so this idea of interstates, that's the whole concept. Autopia, that's what the future is. From just going state to state, by just hopping from state to state, by staying on the same road, kind of bypassing everything. That's the concept of Autopia. Now, I know what you're saying, it's the 70s, interstates have already pretty much been completed. Well, to the Tomorrowland Speedway, that's still prime real estate for rides. That you can shovel people in and out, and it's very enjoyable because kids can feel what it's like to drive without having a license and staying in one path. And that's the whole idea of the Tomorrowland Speedway. Now, the House of Tomorrow and the Carousel of Progress, I get it. Not the same rides at all, but the ideals are the same, and they all flow into this idea of Tomorrowland and why I believe it's been outdated. And House of Tomorrow, it was kind of Walt's mini version of Epcot soon to be. Putting in new technology, showcasing it in this building of the future, showing what life will be like in the future suburbs of families' homes. And then we have the Carousel of Progress, this idea of moving forward. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow, you know the spiel. And in a sense, this was why this is the definition of Tomorrowland. And the House of Tomorrow, it outdated itself, because eventually the time and money it would take to keep updating the thing with new technology. With humanity in the 50s and on, technology kept coming out like this, and it's hard to keep up, which is why the House of Tomorrow outdated itself, and some of the things were highly impractical for actual homes and actual families to do because the technology just simply wasn't there at the time. Now, the Carousel of Progress, that started off in the New York World's Fair, moved to Disneyland, Disneyland to Disney World. And when it came to Disney World, they changed the song and the last scene. And up until the 90s, they had been changing that last scene to keep it fresh. And in a sense, that is Tomorrowland in a nutshell. And I believe the Carousel, you can go into the Carousel Progress and you sit there and you watch it and then you understand, wow, Tomorrowland really is hard to keep up with, because you have this idea of the future. The future is the key. We need to keep moving, innovating, and in a sense, that's why Tomorrowland is hard to keep up with, because in itself, you can't even keep up with the Carousel of Progress, because this future is so easy to have and to hold in people's homes now. Like I said, this technology is just moving faster and faster and faster. And that's, in a sense, the same reason why Tomorrowland can't keep up, because this technology is moving faster and faster and faster. It's kind of the whole thing, why would you go see 3D movies in a theater? Because you can see them in your home now with 3D TVs, 3D glasses, that kind of stuff. We have VRs, we have cell phones, we have that kind of technology to have and to hold. Why do we need to go to a place like Epcot to do it, or the Magic Kingdom's Tomorrowland, or any Tomorrowland? And in a sense, that's why the Carousel of Progress and Tomorrowland are linked together in this House of Tomorrow. It's just a spitting image. And these last two rides, the House of Tomorrow and the People Mover, are spitting images of what Walt's version of Epcot would be. And that's for another video of why Epcot would be hard to maintain. But in a sense, Tomorrowland is extremely hard to keep up with. Now, my last ride, People Mover. In Disneyland, that was oil motors. And then when it came to Disney World, this future idea of lunar synchronization, that was one of Idea's ways of transporting people in his Epcot experimental prototype community of tomorrow, which is he was going to use monorails and the TTA, the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. And now that we don't have Walt's Epcot, it's just a spitting image of what the Epcot could have been, the transportation could have been. Now, don't get me wrong, I love these rides, for the exception of Rocket to the Moon, because I wasn't alive for that, of course. And the House of Tomorrow, sorry. I love these rides, and I love Tomorrowland. And honestly, I don't want to see it change. And here's my explanation why. You can split Tomorrowland into two phases, the space age and the steampunk age. Now, Disneyland Paris did it right. They saw the idea of Tomorrowland becoming hard to keep up with. And they made it to where they took Jules Verne's idea of Tomorrowland and they said, well, this is what the people of the past thought tomorrow would be like, the future would be like. And that's, in a sense, how Tomorrowland, I believe, how Tomorrowland should be looked at. Because that space age, all that stuff, that was in the moment. And if you look at other lands, you have Frontierland, it's about the past. You have Main Street, it's kind of a snapshot of what the old school Main Streets were like, with highways and things such as that. And then you have Fantasyland, of what people can believe, what goes on outside of this realities, so to speak. And you have Adventureland, this concept of adventure, doing something different, going to other places. And Tomorrowland was the only real land that was in the moment. All of them were in the past. Now, I'm not saying that Tomorrowland should go back to the past, because that's not the idea, but this idea of what the past could have been like, because there's different versions. Since Walt Disney has died, the past has gotten extremely dark. And I'm not saying everyone's thinking that, but there's been the common conception. And with Walt Disney's future, it was very positive, it was very upbeat, it was very Jetsons-like, Hanna-Barbera stuff, you know. And that's, in a sense, what I think Tomorrowland should be. It should stay positive, and that's why I like the steampunk idea. Now, Disneyland and Disney World try to do that, but this transition from space age to steampunk was very jolting for a lot of park goers because they weren't used to it. It's not what they grew up with. And it's kind of the whole thing, you're losing your sense of the past. You're not keeping up with the future, which is what a lot of people struggle with today. And that's why I think Tomorrowland itself is hard to keep up with. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I really am passionate about this one. This was my first real video. Well, I'll see you next week, and I hope you have a phantasmic day.